Here we go. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Scott Ball podcast. And today I've got another very special guest. It's Andy Bell, who's a Northern Ireland football expert ahead of Scotland's match against Northern Ireland at Hampden on Tuesday the 26th. I thought it'd be great to tap into the mind of someone who follows the Northern Ireland national team. So first of all, thanks very much, Andy, for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Firstly, if you could just tell us a bit about some of the media work you've been involved in and your connection to the Northern Ireland team.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on. Best of luck with the project. Yeah, obviously, as you can probably hear and you can probably guess, born in Northern Ireland. Currently living in England, in Liverpool. I'm a maths teacher over here, but yeah, always obviously watching the games back home. Been doing Spirit of 2016 for 5 years now, I think it is. Yeah, in fact, it'll be coming up to the 5 year anniversary because the first ones we did were in the March 2019 qualifiers. So coming up to 5 years, and it's always just been a sort of labour of love for me. It's absolutely not a chore at all. It's not work for me. You know, I'll always be watching the Northern Ireland games, whether I'm there or not. And I'll, whether I'm in the pub or whether I'm on the podcast, I like to talk with mates about it after. So it's just been like that for me right the way through. I just started it while I was in uni. Just a bit of a project for me. As I've gone into a full-time job, it's been more difficult to find the time, but we only ever promised we'd do before and after the games, so we've stuck to that. And that's it. If you're interested in a bit of the other stuff over here in Liverpool, I'm a massive Liverpool fan. I'm a season ticket holder. Do a bit of work for the Anfield Wrap. I say work, just contribute to the podcasts and the Red Men TV, which I'm sure a few people will have seen clips from or will have heard of across the time. A couple of big channels there. So yeah, that's been good and that's always fun. And for me, there's not a lot I can do well in my life, but I'd like to think talking about football is one of them.
Definitely, you're a great talker about football. I've checked out a lot of your work, both Liverpool and Northern Ireland related, and I'll put some of those links in when I publish this. The Spirit of 2016 was an influence for this podcast. I've listened to a number of your podcasts about Northern Ireland teams, so yeah, some great work. And yeah, if you could just talk through some of your personal favourite memories about following Northern Ireland national team.
Yeah, of course, the big one for me is Euro 2016. It'll be no shock for listeners to hear. That was just incredible for us growing up. I in my very early years of growing up, I'm only 25, so I saw us beat England, I saw us beat Spain, but I never really had it at an age where I could really appreciate football or really appreciate how big those results were. And as I kind of really got into football when I was 8, 9, 10 and right the way through my time, and I was literally having conversations with my mates about, will we ever see us qualify for a tournament? Is this something we'll ever see in our lifetimes? Because at the time, it just looked like that wouldn't happen. It didn't look like there was any hope whatsoever. And even going into that Euro 2016 campaign, it felt like there was no hope whatsoever. It was, I think the campaign before, we took 1 point from a possible 6 against Luxembourg, 1 point from a possible 6 against Azerbaijan. We weren't even, I think we maybe finished bottom of that group. Nobody thought that was in the equation at all. And just to have that, and albeit I was doing my A-levels at the time, so I never actually got over to France, but it was still as special just watching it on the telly at home with my dad, who had shared so many experiences going down to Windsor Park, watching us get beaten by these nations that should never even have been beating us, and to see us take on the likes of Poland, Germany, and obviously that famous win against Ukraine. I think those were probably the best memories. And yeah, aside from Euro 2016, you probably have to go back to England and Spain, although we had a nice little result in COVID away to Bosnia in a playoff semi-final against all the odds, won on penalties over there. Against a team that in theory is it's a bigger country than us, bigger pool of players to play for, more world-class players playing at a higher level. And I think COVID affected us all really, but watching football was just dreadful in empty stadiums. It felt so robotic, it felt so meaningless. And coupled with that, Liverpool had a terrible season that year. So to have Northern Ireland have that result, albeit a few days later lost in the final to Slovakia, really sort of gave me a lift at a difficult time for us all, really, I think.
Yeah, some amazing memories, and Andy, I can relate to you with regards to sometimes feeling as if it might never come for Northern Ireland. Same age as you, 25, and for a number of years it's felt the same for Scotland, but thankfully we're in a better spot at the moment. I'm interested in like the wider dynamics of football in Northern Ireland, and somebody who's grown up in Northern Ireland. I know you have your own top flight of your own, but I understand that a lot, such as yourself, a lot of people from Northern Ireland who are fans of football follow the likes of teams in Scotland, Celtic, Rangers, and also the big clubs in England. How would you describe the dynamics of what teams football supporters in Northern Ireland support and how that kind of works within society?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The Irish League, I watched quite a bit of it growing up. Me and my dad followed Linfield quite regularly, home and away. Um, and that was at a time where I think Linfield had a lot of money coming in from the Irish FA, because the Irish FA obviously rent out the stadium from Linfield, or did at the time. So Linfield just had a massive financial advantage over the rest of the league, and coupled with Glentoran, sort of traditionally probably the second biggest team in Northern Ireland. Um, they fell off quite a bit, and the league just became a bit of a procession, sort of, I guess, in the same way that the SPL did when Rangers went down the divisions. And, attendance has dropped then because the interest just isn't there. It's a foregone conclusion. Nobody wants to watch, for example, Ligue 1 regularly unless you're a massively into your European football, because it's, as I say, it's a foregone conclusion. So that was sort of happening for me growing up. Recent years, the product of the Irish League has improved. Attendances have improved. It's getting more coverage in the TV. It's getting more coverage, I guess, on podcasts and even with fan media, and that's great to see. And I think for me, the reason I don't follow it as much really is because the amateur leagues in Northern Ireland are played on a Saturday, and they're played at the same time as the Irish League. So a lot of the supporters who would like to go to Irish League games are playing for their own local teams. And back when I was a bit younger and a few stone lighter, I was playing as well for my local side. So it's not like sort of match of the day where you can go on later on and watch it and have a really good grasp of what's going on. You sort of have to be there and following them week in, week out to be properly supporting the Northern Irish team. So that's what sort of made it difficult. And obviously coupled with a move over here, I couldn't really do it. But yeah, certainly the product's improving, the attendances are improving. Even in Europe, traditionally Northern Irish sides would have never got anywhere near sort of qualifying or even getting through a few rounds. Sorry, with the introduction of the Conference League, I think that our sides are pitched against sort of similar level sides from Europe and are having a little bit more success. Linfield only didn't qualify for the Conference League in penalties, and I think it was away goals the season before against Karabakh who knocked them out. Larne have had some good runs in Europe. Cliftonville have had some good runs as well. I think gave Helsinki a good go last year. So, traditionally these Northern Irish teams wouldn't ever be able to compete. But now I think the levels got higher, the gap's closing, and that's great to see because that benefits the national team as much as anything else.
That's cool of you there to fly the flag for the domestic game in Northern Ireland as well. And just on that, because I know how popular the Premier League is in Northern Ireland, and also, as I've touched upon, Celtic and Rangers in Scotland. Do you think the fact that Northern Ireland football supporters do look to those leagues makes it something a bit extra special about following the national team? I sometimes think, not to get into identity too much as a football podcast, but the fact the rugby team is super popular in Ireland, but it's an all-Ireland organised team. Do you think there's something special as a vehicle of identity being able to support the Northern Ireland men's national team?
I think so, yeah. And you're right. We on the podcast don't try and get into the sort of politics and the identity of it, but it's kind of impossible to ignore in Northern Ireland. I traditionally, I suppose, not to go massively into it, but for example, my parents' generations, you were either British or you're Irish, and not related to whether you were sort of Catholic or Protestant. But for me and a lot of people, I think my age and both sides are happy to sort of identify as Northern Irish. And I would love to cultivate more of a Northern Irish identity. And I personally really don't like the current national anthem of our national team. I'd like to change that to something properly Northern Irish, the way you guys have with O Flower Scotland. It's belted out, and it's belted out with pride, and it's belted out with, no matter who you support or what background you're from, you take pride and it gets you up for the game, and we just don't have that. So I think, yeah, especially just sort of the situation with the local league, with it being mainly amateur, and with it, with plenty of football fans identifying with teams across the water, whether that's Celtic and Rangers or whether that's Premier League. I think it is really important to us. It kind of is sort of, for a lot of us, like our club side. It's the thing we really take pride in. And it helps as well when you've got a bit of a romantic story of how poor we've been over the years, how much we've struggled, but at times have had sort of glimpses of success here and there. So I think that all adds to it. It all adds to the idea that you support us through the dark times, and then you get slithers of rewards here and there, and hopefully another one will be coming soon. But no, you're absolutely right to ask the question on identity. I think it's a really important thing, and I think it's an important thing to talk about as well. It plays a massive part in Northern Irish football, absolutely.
It's fascinating insight, Andy. And on to the current team then. Obviously, the leader of the Spirit of 2016 side, Michael O'Neill, is back in charge after a difficult tenure, I think, to say the least, under Ian Barraclough. It was a difficult Euros qualifying campaign, as I'm sure you'll attest to. How would you summarise, Michael O'Neill 2.0, if you like? How would you summarise how he's getting on in his second crack at the job?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You're right. Ian Barraclough did struggle. Initially, he came in. He had that result in Bosnia, which I referenced, and he played a massive part in that. In the 119th minute of extra time, he brought on two players who he brought off two players who had substituted on previously to bring on two players for penalty kicks, and they got us through into the final of the playoffs. So it couldn't have really started any better for him, with us getting a massive win, and obviously him getting massive plaudits for that. And then it did just sort of go downhill. The results weren't coming through, and we had terrible Nations League campaigns. We didn't really give it much of a shot in the qualifying campaign either. And there didn't really seem to be too much of a plan, with Northern Ireland, even in the first spell under Michael O'Neill, where I referenced earlier, that terrible qualification campaign in 2014. You could at least see what we were trying to do. You could at least see we were trying to sort of change the style a little bit from the Laurie Sanchez days, where we got some good results, but it was essentially just kick the life out of the opposition and hope they didn't fancy it in Belfast was the plan. Michael sort of brought a little bit more football into it, was bringing young players through, and albeit Barclay, in fairness to him, did bring young players through. Some games you were just thinking, what on earth is the plan here? There seemed to be no sort of structure in the build up. In possession, it was just sort of down the line and chase it at times. And I think he even came out and said himself that they didn't even practice set pieces. So for Northern Ireland, for us, I think in 2016 we had 80% of our goals in qualifying came from set pieces. It's such an important thing for a small nation like us, to use our physical advantage over certain European nations and get goals in that way. That the fact that he was just leaving that up to the players was just galling as far as I was concerned. So yeah, fair play. Seemed a nice enough guy, but a change needed to happen, and especially when Michael became available, it was a no-brainer. And interestingly, actually, the Irish FA wanted to keep Barraclough on. The plan was to keep Barraclough on for the last campaign, and then we got the draw, which was Denmark, Finland, San Marino, Slovenia, and who was the other team? Kazakhstan. And we got
that on paper, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. We were buzzing. We if you look back on a live stream that we did at that draw, we look really stupid because we were buzzing with that draw and thinking we had a chance to qualify, and we got absolutely nowhere near it in the end. And the Irish FA actually came out, and I think it was leaked through the press that they made the change because they saw an opportunity there to qualify. And if let's say we drew France and the Netherlands, like I think the Republic of Ireland did, they probably would have stuck with Barraclough and let him bring the players through and given him another chance. But they thought, no, we need to get the best possible manager we can in right now, and it just didn't really go according to plan. We were further away than the Irish FA thought. We were further away than Michael thought, and we were certainly further away than what I thought. And there were some encouraging performances through the campaign, some decent attacking football, chances created. We weren't battered in every game by any stretch, but it was the same hard luck story that we've had pretty much the whole way through, of nobody being able to put the ball in the net, and games just sort of petering out into really frustrating defeats. I think 5 of the 10 games ended in a 1-0 defeat, and given 2 of them were against 2 games were against San Marino. That's 5 of your remaining 8 games, which are really in any way a contest. So yeah, that was frustrating from that point of view. And then it was sort of petering out into a really miserable campaign. But I think, as we maybe said in the pre-pod there, we got that win over Denmark at the end of the campaign, albeit they'd already qualified. I don't think they put their absolute strongest team out, but for our young lads who have grafted and not really had much fun through the entire campaign, it was nice for them to get that moment. We had Isaac Price, who made his debut, scoring the first goal. Dion Charles, who's albeit like 27, 28, but in terms of international experience, a very young player, he got the second. And it felt like some of the things that we've been working on, some of the things that we've been building came through into a nice little night at Windsor Park. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that momentum can sort of carry on into the next campaign, into the next Nations Leagues, and hopefully with a couple of positive results in these friendlies for us.
Nice one. With regards to the current squad, I know the generation for 2016, a number of those key players are coming towards the end of their careers and some have retired, and I know Johnny Evans is unavailable for the upcoming matches, but who would you say right now are the kind of cornerstones of the Northern Ireland side, the kind of indispensable players that Michael O'Neill should build a team around?
Yeah, that's quite a tricky one. You're absolutely right to mention some of those players from 2016. Like, we had a real strong spine in 2016 with Johnny Evans at the back. Craig Cathcart, Gareth McCauley were all Premier League players. Chris Brunt didn't make the Euros, but he was playing for West Brom at the time, and I think we had three of Tony Pulis's West Brom back four playing, and they were notoriously, obviously, well drilled and well coached. So we had quality in the side, and we also had players playing together in the side as well, and that was incredible. At times we had to go three at the back because we couldn't ignore Premier League players playing for Northern Ireland. Three of them just happened to play centre half. I suppose similar to the situation that Scotland had with Tierney and Robertson for a while. You had Steve Davis in the middle, who is arguably the greatest ever player to play for Northern Ireland. He's retired now. And up front, Kyle Lafferty, which probably Scottish football fans listening to this may laugh at the idea that he was a strong player for us, but for one
campaign, it was well known how good he played for Northern Ireland, though. He was brilliant for you.
For one campaign, it was like David Healy in the days where he couldn't get a game for Leeds, but was breaking records in European championships for us in terms of goal scoring. He was just on fire, and we were good in both boxes. We had a striker who scored goals, and we had defenders who were well drilled and could keep them out. So yeah, and pretty much all of those players, in fact, absolutely all of those players have either retired or are not going to get called up again. So we have had to bring young players through, and probably players like Conor Bradley, who is still really young. He's only just come through at Liverpool, but he's actually quite experienced for Northern Ireland. I think he had 15, 20 caps for Northern Ireland before he even kicked the ball for Liverpool. So we've actually had to ask players like that and players like Shea Charles, who again has been really promising for us, but is still really early on in his career. We've sort of needed to ask them to step up and become leaders, because we've had to bring even younger players through and more inexperienced players through, in order to just keep this going and sort of keep the transition going between the 2016 side and into the team that you'll see at Hampden Park on Tuesday night. So yeah, I think in terms of the stalwarts, in terms of the spine of the team, I'd probably say Daniel Ballard. He's playing in the Championship for Sunderland, but he's always been very, very strong in the Northern Ireland shirt. He's really become a leader. A lot of experience now. Brilliant games against the likes of Italy and Switzerland against top-class forwards. It wouldn't surprise me if he's playing Premier League very, very soon. In the middle, I suppose, yeah, Paddy McNair and Ali McCann were experienced campaigners again playing in the Championship. Pretty much nailed on starters for us at this point, and I've always played quite well for Northern Ireland. And I would say, Conor Bradley, you can't ignore him at the minute. The kid's just had an unbelievable season, and it just filled me with pride seeing him score for Liverpool. I think first Northern Irish player to play for Liverpool since Elisha Scott back in the 50s. You know what I mean? So we've really been starved of that, and to be there at Anfield on the night where he scored against Chelsea was just unbelievable. And it's so exciting because Northern Ireland fans knew Conor Bradley was a player right the way from when he came through. You don't come up through Liverpool's academy unless you get something about you. But the level he's actually played at this season for Liverpool has surprised even me, as somebody who knew a lot about him. He's gone up to a level which I don't think anyone expected that he had in him, but he's shown it and he's kept at that level and he's doing it consistently. The extent to which we're talking about one of the best generational talents England's ever had, and Trent Alexander-Arnold actually having to move position to accommodate him, which is just amazing. But Bradley can play in other positions as well. He's sort of seen as a long-term box-to-box midfielder. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting players coming through. My only concern is that they sort of all have to develop as we hope, and as we know with young players that doesn't always happen. But yeah, there's certainly enough to get excited about for now.
Yeah, I was keen to discuss Conor Bradley with you. Obviously, he must be your favourite guy in the world right now. I can relate to this. I actually support a team, Dundee United, in Scotland, and I saw a young Andy Robertson's first ever pre-season outing and professional outing for United. And yeah, he's been my guy since, and I'm sure that'll be you with Conor Bradley for the next 10, 15 years. Just on Bradley and Robertson, our captain, I think with regards to natural talent, as you've touched upon there, you see a lot of young players come through into teams and they hold their own and they do well, but rarely have I seen a player come into a first team like Liverpool and look like one of the best players so quickly, like Conor Bradley. And so I do think in that respect, he has more natural talent than Robertson. But do you think Andy Robertson could be a great role model and a benchmark for somebody like Conor Bradley to aspire towards with regards to his consistency and his professionalism?
Totally. I actually think, people make the comparisons between Trent Alexander-Arnold and Conor Bradley. I think Conor Bradley's style of play is much more like Robertson. Maybe back sort of 5-6 years ago. I'm not saying Robertson's finished by any stretch of the imagination, but he's had to hone his game a little bit. He has to pick his moments now for Liverpool when he has to get up and down. But he's always been a better defender than anyone's given him credit for. So, I think at the moment, Liverpool back in the day, Robertson would have bailed Trent out quite a bit because Trent would have gone forward, but you've had that solidity in the left hand side with Robertson and Van Dijk, and I think where Bradley can definitely learn from Robertson is the defensive side of things. Robertson's always got up and down. Bradley will always be able to do that. He's so much energy and he has so much pace. But at times sort of can get caught out positionally, and albeit he's got the recovery pace to get back in there, you can always learn when you're a young fullback to sort of get yourself in the positions and be a little bit more defensively sound, and that's probably where Bradley has to work, although he's defended very well for Liverpool this season. So that's probably a harsh criticism, but if there had to be any criticism, it would be that. I think Robertson has just been such an incredible signing for Liverpool and such a great player for Scotland. He's so energetic. He's such a leader. He's passionate. He gets stuck in. We love that in this city. Somebody with a bit of needle, somebody that can relate to the supporters as much as anything else. And obviously that massive part of that is his upbringing in Glasgow. And I'm sure you guys love that as well. And I can't think of a much better leader at international level for the country than Andy Robertson. I absolutely love the guy, and I will be very sad for the day we do have to replace him at Liverpool. So absolutely, it's great for Conor Bradley to have someone like that to look up to learn from. And I'm sure Robertson will. He strikes me as somebody who's absolutely got his head screwed on. Strikes me as someone who could become a manager someday, to be honest. And we'll see part of his job is, yes, being consistent for Liverpool, yes, playing and maintaining his levels of quality and fitness for as long as he can, but also to bring through the likes of Conor Bradley, to bring through the likes of young players in the Scotland squad as well, and he'll take that part of his job very, very seriously. And anyone who ever talks about him says that about him, and it just shows how much of a consummate professional he is, really.
It's nice to hear you share the admiration for Scotland's captain. Just on Conor Bradley and Trent Alexander-Arnold, you touched upon it there. Obviously, it's going to be a focus for you as a Northern Ireland fan as to how Bradley develops at Liverpool. I know this may be a contentious, awkward question, but how do you see that unfolding in the years to come with regards to having two outstanding right backs at the minute? I know there's been a lot of talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold moving into midfield. How do you see that panning out?
I think it really depends on how Liverpool see both players long term. As I mentioned earlier, there has been a bit of chat about Conor Bradley being a midfielder long term, and in the Carabao Cup final, Conor Bradley, when Hughes gets injured, I can't even remember, somebody gets injured. Sorry, it's Gravenberch gets injured. Harvey Elliott has to come back into midfield, and the solution is to put Conor Bradley to the right wing, where obviously he can use his pace. Now, he didn't have a massive impact in that final. He still had a couple of chances, but he the fact that he was the one that was chosen to go out of position at his age and with his lack of experience shows that he can also move positions. There's been chat about Trent Alexander-Arnold moving into midfield since he came through at Liverpool. He's a generational talent. He's so much quality in the ball. And the idea is that if you put him into midfield, that he can do things closer to goal and make more of an impact. And it's not really actually worked out that way at times. Keen sort of tactical watchers of the Premier League will know that a lot of the time he's coming into midfield and doing that sort of inverted fullback thing, which seems to be in vogue at the minute. Even Northern Ireland tried it a couple of times. And it's that idea that he can get closer to play. But actually, I think Trent's better when he has the game in front of him and he can see what's in front of him. And sometimes you get a bit more space out wide as well. Like, sometimes it gets very congested in there. But Trent would have to learn that position as much as anyone else. But yeah, it's a conversation that's gone on forever. Liverpool have flirted with it, but never quite done it. And I do genuinely think, and probably there is some of it that is biased towards Conor Bradley, but I think if Bradley continues at this level, and it's not just a flash in the pan, and this is actually, he is a Liverpool senior player to come, which I fully believe that he is. I think they just have to do something. Their hand's going to be forced. It's not going to be a case of let's try it and see if it works. It's going to be no. We need to actually find a different position for this guy because we have to get them both on the pitch. And funnily enough, it's actually similar enough at Northern Ireland because we've got an outstanding young fullback in Trey Hume as well. He's playing for Sunderland, sort of top end of the championship. Could potentially get promoted at some point, maybe not this year. But you could end up having two Premier League right backs there. And Trey Hume's sort of more defensively sound than Bradley. And we've toyed with a couple of things. 3-5-2 with Hume on the right of the back three and Bradley at wing back. I think Scotland did the same thing with Robertson and Tierney for a while.
I was going to bring this up, Andy. It reminds me very much of our age-old Tierney-Robertson conundrum, which
Absolutely,
we've just about
yeah.
got to grips with now.
And this happens all the time. I remember Rangers having Tavernier and Nathan Patterson and trying to fit them in at times. And, you normally end up having to shoehorn someone in where you don't really want to play them. And that's probably what Northern Ireland fans are going to expect to see for a while with Hugh and Bradley, because I think both do have to play. Both are playing at too high a level and too high a consistency to not play them. So yeah, I'm not sure, just because I've not really seen Bradley in any other position than right back. I'd be lying if I said I'd watched him regularly when he was a kid growing up or in the academy. So I've heard that he can play different positions, but I've not actually seen it. And maybe these two forthcoming games against Romania and Scotland will be a time where that is tried out, where we see if we can do something different with the two of them. Because if you're not going to do it in a friendly, you're never going to try it. So don't be surprised to see Bradley in a sort of number 8 position, or even on the right wing on Tuesday night, is what I would say.
Who would have thought? It's been one of the biggest talking points, I feel, in football the last few years, with regard to Trent Alexander-Arnold potentially moving into midfield. Who would have thought a young boy from Northern Ireland could be the major factor in that? Because as you say, it could be forced into it, whoever the next Liverpool manager is, if Bradley continues with this momentum. So definitely an interesting one to watch next season and the years to come. Anyway, now on to the game. The main reason why we're chatting today is Scotland v Northern Ireland at Hampden Park, a friendly match. I looked at some of the stats, and actually very close. A lot of the matches throughout history. There have been 36 matches played. Scotland have won 17, Northern Ireland 9, and 10 draws. But I think that adds up correctly. Something like that. Anyway, a lot of the scorelines were very close. That's what struck me, and I believe this game will be close as well. And if I was to say to you Scotland and Scottish football, what are the first thoughts, images that spring to mind?
Oh wow, I think growing up it would have been glorious failure. I think it would have been these miraculous brave performances which ultimately resulted in defeat and narrow losses and narrowly missing out in qualification. I think that's what we associated it with, and we all had a bit of a smirk, a bit of friendly banter when all four of the 5 home nations, to call them that, qualified for Euro 2016, and Scotland didn't.
I remember it well.
But
Rough.
I think it's fair to say you guys have had the last laugh in recent years with the qualifications for the tournament, and nowadays it's like, I don't think you'd have taken Scotland seriously as a strong international nation up until maybe 6 or 7 years ago, certainly for someone my age. But nowadays you do expect them to compete. You do expect them to not only have that sort of passion and grit and all the sort of stereotypes you associate with Scottish football, but actually to have the quality, because there's so many, well, they're pretty much all top flight players playing now, which is such a sea change for what you're going to see from Northern Ireland and what you'll ever really see from Northern Ireland, I think. So yeah, I was really happy for you when you qualified. I will support Scotland. I like Scotland and I like Wales. I'll not support England. I'm sure that
You
pretty
both,
much
don't worry.
I'll unite pretty much anyone listening to that podcast and saying this. I can't stand them, but I will get behind Scotland and Wales. Not, if they lose a game in the Euros, I'll forget about it within 5 minutes. It doesn't affect me, but I'll watch it as a neutral and prefer them to win. So I'm looking forward to seeing that this coming summer. And yeah, just incredible results really at home. The game against Spain, I'd be lying if I said I'd tuned into all of them, but the game against Spain was it wasn't a smash and grab. It was a genuine Scotland were the better team, and you're thinking Spain are going to come out second half and create chance after chance, but it just didn't happen. It was it was a fantastic performance and full value, not only to qualify but top the group. So yeah, I think in terms of what I think of Scottish football, up until 8 years ago, to be honest, a little bit of jokers for what they should be, but now a serious football team, a team with quality, and mixing that with the, you don't want to lose that identity of the passion, of the grit, of the determination, because that's something that sets Scotland aside. I think something that sets Northern Ireland aside as well. When you match that with the quality, you can be really excited about going into this tournament in the summer, and I'm certainly interested to see how they do.
That's cool to hear from someone externally looking in upon the Scotland team. With regards to our current squad, our pool of players, which players would you say you admire most from the Scotland team? And if you could pick one to fill into that Northern Ireland side, who would you pick?
Oh wow. The obvious answer for me would be Robertson, wouldn't it? In terms of admiration, given who I support and my admiration for Robertson as a whole. And I think we've touched on Robertson already, but the fact that I think there's a famous tweet goes around from his days at Queen's Park where he basically says, "I've no money, I'm skint and I can't get a job." And I think this is when he's just made his debut when he's 16, 17 for, I think it's Queen's Park he played for.
Yeah.
So the fact that he wasn't, your typical sort of academy player come through and was always going to be a superstar. No, he had to graft, and he went
He
down
played for
to
Queen's Park, and part time he would hand out match programmes at Hampden Park, Scotland
brilliant,
games, and now he's Scotland captain.
And those are the stories that you expect. And you see players like, I don't know, Jude Bellingham come through, and he was going to be a superstar right away from when he was 10 years old and came through the academy, whereas Robertson's done it a different way, and he's gone down, and he went and he did the lower leagues in England and Hull, and did a season in the Championship, and was roundly mocked when Liverpool signed him, to be honest. This idea we're signing players from Hull, relegated sides, but they did so well for us in the past. Even, Wijnaldum and Shaqiri were also from relegated sides and played very well for Liverpool. So, yeah, I think his story is probably the one I admire the most. And to be honest, I think McTominay as well, much as I dislike him on a personal level. Yeah, I mean, I was there on Sunday as well when he scored right in front of me and mouthed some not very nice things to Liverpool away end at the end. But he was someone as well who came into United, I think, under Mourinho, and everyone just thought he was a bit of a stopper, a bit of a sort of head it and kick it and get in the way of things. But I think we're all quite surprised that he's still in the United team at this point. Not surprised in a negative way, in that he's actually shown himself to be good enough to play at that level, and he's got goals in him, he's got big performances in him, and the supporters at Manchester United love him as well. So, he's carved out more of a career at the very top level for himself than certainly I thought. And in terms of somebody to slot into the Northern Ireland team, just whoever your best goal scorer is, even if he doesn't score many goals, because he'll score more goals than any of our lads put together.
I was thinking when I asked that question, perhaps John McGinn, because he's our best goal scorer, a bit of quality in the top end of the pitch maybe could help Northern Ireland. But I'm glad you picked out Scott McTominay, even as a Liverpool supporter, because I do feel, in this kind of modern football Twitter sphere, just because of maybe the way he looks and he's an academy graduate, people don't quite understand the attributes that he does have. And I think he's also been a victim of the kind of Manchester United era he's playing in. Like, I think he's a player that Sir Alex Ferguson would have valued. As a squad player, someone that'll give 100%. He's a great athlete. He's got attributes. He's good at running into the box late. He's not a world beater by any stretch, but every team needs a squad player like that. So yeah, I think he deserves.
You mentioned
respect.
Ferguson there. Who was the player Ferguson turned to any time where you needed a reliable player? It was Darren Fletcher. Every single game where he needed just somebody come in, 7 out of 10 performance, carry out the instructions to a T. Darren Fletcher every time. Ji-sung Park as well. I mean, Ferguson even says when. He reckons if he played Ji-sung Park and put him on Messi in the final at Wembley, that had beaten Barcelona. So I think players like that. Yeah, you're right. Modern day Twitter, they don't get the attributes. We've plenty of them at Northern Ireland. They don't get the plaudits. But they are so important, and they always have been, and they always will be. There's a reason, for example, Jordan Henderson gets picked by every single manager he ever plays for, but gets roundly mocked on the internet, and that is because generally there's more to it than just the tactics or just the raw quality. You need someone to go out and carry out those instructions, and McTominay's a leader as well as somebody who brings quality to that Scotland side from what I can see.
And just quickly, it'd be interesting from an external point of view again. Our Euros group is the hosts Germany, Switzerland, Hungary. If you're to be honest, how do you assess our chances in that group at the Euros?
Strongly, to be completely honest. They you've as good a chance as any of the other two, aside from Germany, I would say. I believe it's still the system where is it 4 of the 6 third place teams qualify, and that
one win could do it for us.
Yeah, one win could do it. It did it for us in 2016. We beat Ukraine 2-0 and we kept the score down against Germany and Poland. Finished with 3 points, a goal difference of 0, and qualified. And it can do that. It's basically that, you target that game or those 2 games, you will need to get a win and possibly a point elsewhere. But that probably will do it. And if sort of it might come down to whoever gets smashed by Germany, by the least. But even I don't really see why Scotland can't give Germany a game. If you can give Spain a game, if you can give these nations that Scotland have given a game, I mean, I can't really remember the last time Scotland got hammered. You could probably let me know better than anyone else. But I can certainly remember the last time Northern Ireland got hammered because it was the second last game we played, 4-0 in Finland. So yeah, people will look at that and think Germany are going to hammer all around them, but I don't necessarily think they will. Switzerland have made their history, made their football in history, and like just boring the life out of people in international tournaments and taking points off teams that they've no right to take points off. They beat Spain in 2010. They drew with Brazil in a recent World Cup. They just bore the life out of us and get to the quarterfinals generally all the time, and they're always there as well. And Hungary, I think Northern Ireland beat them home and away in the Euro 2016 qualifying, but they're a different proposition now. A couple of exciting players coming through, and not to make it too. I've mentioned quite a lot of Liverpool, but Dominic Szoboszlai, we love him at the minute, and he's so well revered in Hungary too. So it's an exciting group. I think every match against Switzerland will be boring, and the other games will be dead exciting because the other teams play good football. It's sort of hell for leather. It's high paced. Scotland-Hungary will be a good game because both teams will identify that as the game they can get their 3 points in, which will take them to the next round. So I think it's a really exciting group, to be completely honest. I'm not going to lie, when I hadn't had a major look at the group beforehand, so I was sort of reacting to that off the cuff. I'm sure I saw it back a while ago, but no, now that you've said it, I think you've got as good a chance as anyone. And I suppose a game against Northern Ireland will most resemble a game against Switzerland, not in terms of the quality by any stretch, but in terms of the fact that we'll probably come to Hampden Park. We know we're by quite a distance the inferior side, and we're going to sort of keep things tight and give nothing silly away and try and do that. And we know that's how Switzerland like to play. So there's no doubt that the Scottish FA will have picked these friendlies with the Euros in mind and styles of play that they may come up against in mind. So yeah, it'll be an interesting test for you guys, I think.
Nice. And quickly before I put you on the spot with your Northern Ireland Lifetime 11, I was looking through Northern Ireland squad, and there's a number of players based in the Scottish top flight at Kilmarnock: Matty Kennedy, Brad Lyons, a couple at St Mirren, Keelan Boyne-Munns and Conor McMenamin. I know there's been a number of players, even in the famous 2016 team, that have played in the Scottish Premiership. Do you like to see players? I think it's a good level for Northern Ireland players to be playing at. Do you like to see players at clubs in Scottish Premiership?
Absolutely, I think so. It's difficult to sort of say what level exactly it's at. Certainly on the internet, it's much derided, and I think people like to make it out as if, well, it is a 2-team league in terms of the title race. But I think there's a lot of quality there, and certainly a lot of our players have really benefited from playing in that league. If you've got a player playing at Hearts or Aberdeen or Hibernian, you're playing probably most of your games against teams where you've got a fighting chance against, but you also get that, 6 or maybe even 8 games a season against Celtic and Rangers, against not top European opposition, but good sides where you can challenge yourself. So
plus they play in front of big crowds under pressure every week as well.
Totally, yeah. So you look at maybe if you go to the Championship, you're playing good teams, but you're playing all sort of teams at the same sort of level. Whereas in the Scottish Premiership, maybe the bottom end of it isn't quite as strong, but the top end is certainly much stronger. So you're constantly challenging yourselves, as you say, in those environments and against those good players. So Niall McGinn famously scored our second goal in 2016 against Ukraine. That's still the commentary for the theme tune of our podcast. He was playing at Aberdeen at the time. We plenty of players around the team.
Liam Boyce has been a great player for Hearts.
Liam Boyce, absolutely. I never really done it for Northern Ireland, albeit Josh McGuinness has 10 goals for Northern Ireland.
Kyle Lafferty, obviously at Rangers at Hearts.
Lafferty, absolutely.
Stephen Davis has played for Rangers. McGuinness was Aberdeen, and he was Kilmarnock. I think he was possibly even Kilmarnock when he when he came through in 2016. Michael McGovern as well came through at Hamilton, and nobody knew really what he was about, and then he just had what I will genuinely still say is the best ever goalkeeping performance I've ever seen in the European Championships against Germany, when he kept that at 1-0 and kept the goal difference down, which ended up qualifying for us. So no, I think so. You look at the minute, Ross McCausland's another one who's come out of nowhere, really. He wasn't even getting a game for our under-21s a year ago, and he came through at Rangers. He's got a manager there in Felipe Clement who believes in him.
and has given him a bit of license to play. And I think he struggled a little bit recently, but Rangers have wangled their way back to the top of the league somehow in Scotland. So and he's been playing quite a regular part there as well as in Europe. So that's someone that we didn't really earmark as someone who could come in immediately and make a difference in terms of quality for Northern Ireland, but you're looking now, and if he's playing sort of week in week out for Rangers, he by proxy has to start for Northern Ireland because we don't have that pool of players just to pick from. So I think he's actually injured for the first game and might make the second game. So it would be nice to see a little bit of him there, and he'll know a little bit about the players he's playing against if he's coming up against Scotland. So yeah, bringing through a player like that, another couple of caps under his belt, being around the squad, ready to sort of hit a target when we come to the Nations League, I think will really benefit us. But no, we've certainly got a lot to thank the Scottish Premiership for over the years, and in terms of the development of some of our players. And long may it continue, because players playing in Scotland or anywhere sort of Championship and above for England will give us a fighting chance of competing against the likes of Romania and Scotland, which is what we'll need to do if we're ever going to qualify again.
Nice, and yeah, it's been great chatting to you, Andy. To finish off, it's a bit of fun we like to do in the Scott Ball podcast. It's to go through your lifetime 11 as a Northern Ireland fan. What kind of era would you say you first start remembering watching Northern Ireland matches, would you say?
Probably around 2006. I remember, I was only sort of 7-8 years old at the time. So yeah, around that time where we'd started to beat Spain and England, I think is probably all I can pick from. So it's not a massive pool I've got here, but I'll give it a go.
Nice one. You're the manager. Any information you like, and some personal anecdotes would be great for each player.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll rattle through it. You're right. You have put me on the spot, but I think it's always a bit more fun to do it like that. So in do you know what? Full disclosure, I'll probably miss somebody really obvious here. In goal, I will go for Mike Taylor. I think as many great memories as we had with Roy Carroll, who had a brilliant qualifying campaign when he came in at a really old age, actually. Came back into the squad after terrible problems with I think it was gambling. His career was in free fall, and he came back and played a massive part in us qualifying for Euro 2016. He was brilliant. McGovern had brilliant performances and was a great servant to us, but I think in terms of the longevity and the level that they played at like sort of really well for Northern Ireland, I think Mike Taylor, who sort of made a big career at Birmingham in the Premier League, will probably be the goalkeeper for me. Right back is probably a little bit of a controversial one, but I'm actually going to say Conor McLaughlin, who never
Not
really...
Conor Bradley.
No, I was thinking about it, but I think I have to be fair and have to give Conor a bit more of a chance to prove himself for Northern Ireland, although he's been brilliant. But McLaughlin is someone who I really, really admire in terms of how he came through. Very similar story to some of the players we've talked about before. At the time he was playing in the Euros, he was playing for Fleetwood in League One. He was a bit derided here and there. But between 2014 and 2020, I don't think he put in a bad performance for Northern Ireland. He was so consistent, and he was one of those players who, came in clearly one of the weaker in terms of quality in the side, but was maybe dragged up to the level, or dragged himself up to the level to give him more credit. And yeah, he was just great, Conor McLaughlin, and as I say, out of nowhere. So I'm going to give right back to him. Centre halves, it's fairly easy for me. It's Johnny Evans and Gareth McCauley. G-Mac.
What a partnership that is.
Unbelievable, and at club level and as well as international level. Gareth McCauley, really late bloomer in his career. I think he was playing in the Northern Irish League until 24, possibly. Got his move across the water. Played at Ipswich for a while, but didn't really become a regular Premier League player until his really late 20s. And didn't really become a big player for Northern Ireland until that time as well. He was sort of hoofed out here and there to right back and left back, and ended up just becoming this unbelievable goal threat from set pieces. He was...
I was going to say, I'm a bit of a fantasy football geek, and I remember him at West Brom, just being a magnet from set pieces.
Yeah,
He'd score about 5-6 goals minimum a year from set pieces.
I was going to say that myself. Yeah, fantasy football. He was like a cult hero there for a while, wasn't he? Scoring loads of goals. But he did that at international level too, and scored so many important goals. I think he gets 3 or 4 in the qualifying campaign for Euro 2020, and I believe he has the same number of goals for Northern Ireland as George Best, which is partly speaks to the fact that George Best didn't play as many games for Northern Ireland as we would have liked, but also, for a centre half to have, I think, 9 goals at international levels is just incredible. And the one for us is the one in Ukraine. It's the iconic one in the hailstones. Norwood floats the ball in, and big Gareth, 34, 35 years old. I think he was one of, if not the oldest player to score at the Euros, even to this day. So yeah,
dropping all the stats on me today, Andy.
Yeah, I'll have to sort of fact check on that one because I'm not entirely sure. But that goal for me, I think I'm generally, I love my football, I live and breathe it, but I'm not really someone who gets emotional. I'll not cry after a loss, and I'll not cry when things go well. But that's probably the closest I've ever come to tears when he scored. And I remember saying to my mates at the time, going into Euro 2016, we didn't expect to win a game, we didn't expect to get a point. We didn't expect to get anywhere near going through, and I just said to them, I want to be able to celebrate a meaningful goal, even if
moment.
It's,
that's all fans
absolutely.
want, really, isn't it?
And even if it was an equaliser in a 4-1 defeat, that would have been enough for me, because I would have got to celebrate a meaningful goal. And not only did he score a meaningful goal, he essentially scored the winner in that game. And that again goes and seals it in the 96th minute. But 18,000 Northern Ireland fans in Lyon. Pretty much everyone who wanted a ticket got one, and it was just a sea of green and the most incredible moment. Left back, going to go Chris Brunt, and that's certainly with in mind who on earth am I going to pick on the wings. So I might have wanted to leave him there, so might have wanted to have a think about that one. But yeah, Brunty was a figure of mockery for a while for Northern Ireland fans, because he played so well in the Premier League for West Brom. Everyone remembers his delivery from his left foot.
Another fantasy football legend, great assist
Another
maker.
fantasy football legend, absolutely, especially when he was converted to a defender, because he was a winger for so long. And yeah, he I think at one point he got 60 or 70 games into his Northern Ireland career and had only scored 1 goal against San Marino. And at the time when Northern Ireland was struggling,
disappointing that for a player of his technical quality, for sure.
And that was the thing. It was like we actually had a lot of Premier League players at that time. We were underperforming for what we should have done, and Brunt was like the spearhead of that sort of agenda of this guy who's playing really well in the Premier League week in, week out. And he scored 1 goal in his Northern Ireland career against San Marino. But for 2016, Michael moved him to left back, and got the best out of him there, and most importantly got him on the pitch, because he wasn't good enough to play on the pitch in a front position for Northern Ireland at that time. And Michael put the arm around him, found a position for him at left back, and made sure that we had somebody on those corners right the way through, which was so fruitful for us. And that Brunt-Macaulay partnership from set pieces was just genuinely deadly. Chris Brunt had one of the best left foots in the Premier League for a while in terms
club
of
and country partnership, that one.
Yeah, so all the partnerships there, and that's sort of a back four that works quite well. I'm conscious of just not just naming the 2016 team here, but obviously that makes up a massive part of the best Northern Ireland team I've seen and probably ever will see. In the midfield, Steve Davis speaks for himself. What a player, what a man. Just a consummate professional. I remember when Stephen Gerrard was at Rangers talking about Davis, and he said he's just one of those players that you don't need to manage. He turns up at the right times, he eats the right things, he looks after himself, he keeps himself fit, he says the right things, you just never need to worry about him. And he was always a player that I think could have played at probably a higher level in the Premier League as well. A really, really consistent player for decent Rangers sides, but also, decent Premier League sides as well. Like that Southampton side, he finished top half quite a bit in that era. A stalwart for them. And, with Davis, I think he's 34, 35 when Rangers win the league in the COVID season, and I think he's possibly the Football Writers Player of the Year, genuinely one of the best players in the division to that day. And if you don't look after yourself and don't look after your body, you don't get to do that right the way into your 30s. And he was just incredible, broken all sorts of records in terms of international appearances. And I think he's finished with 13, 14 goals for us, our third top goal scorer. For a midfielder who's not renowned for his goals, you have to play a lot of games and be very consistent for Northern Ireland to be hitting those numbers, and that's what he was.
Loved by Rangers supporters as well, Davis. And I read today that he's joined ranks with the backroom staff with Michael O'Neill.
He has indeed, and while he'll have to learn will have to earn his money in terms of coaching, it's a little bit different. He'll have the knowledge there, and he'll be able to impart knowledge onto these young players coming through that we need so badly. I'm gonna skip ahead and I just throw uh I'll throw Lafferty and Healy in there because I think I have to. I was going to go 4-3-3, but I can't shank one of them onto the wings. Certainly not. Well, yeah, certainly not David Healy. He was the definition of a penalty box striker. With both players, just didn't really perform ever to their full potential for their clubs. We used to literally sing it. The team that I don't think lost went on to lose a game for the next 6 years in Spain. We were singing, "Are you watching?" We were singing, "Are you watching Dennis Wise?" Because Dennis Wise never picked him for Leeds, but that was because he wasn't performing at club level. He wasn't performing at Championship level. And Laurie Sanchez brings him into the Premier League. I think he scores a hat trick in his debut, but I don't think really does anything after that. So never really did it for his club. But for Northern Ireland was just the absolute business for so long. He's a record goal scorer by a mile. It'll be a long time before anyone touches that record. He's a million miles ahead of Lafferty in second. And Lafferty, I think, just for those 2 years where he fired us to the tournament, and whatever came before that, whatever stupidity came before that and came after that, he'll always have a place in my heart for those moments that he gave me and gave us. There's a photo that goes around a lot of Lafferty and Paulo Dybala at Palermo, where Lafferty actually outscored him that season. When you see what Dybala went on to do in his club career, it's infinitely better than what Lafferty ever did in his club career. But Lafferty does have those 2 years where he was incredible for us and scored 7 or 8 goals in that campaign, and important goals, big times. He sets the tone for the campaign with the winner in Hungary in the first day. He's suspended for the game where we qualify. Of course he is. Of course he picked up stupid yellows along the way. I'm pretty sure that one was for dissent as well. So yeah, like an absolute airhead, all things considered, but an airhead who gave us some of the best moments of our life, and we'll never forget him for that. So yeah, it has to be Healy and Lafferty up front. So that leaves me with 2 wide midfielders to pick and another centre mid.
3 more midfielders to complete your team.
Yeah, I think I would have to go for probably Chris Baird as my other centre mid, just for the consistency. Played so well for Fulham right the way through. You don't do the years he did in the Premier League without being a really sort of consistent performer, and with someone
underrated,
very underrated, and with someone like Steve Davis who played. He played so well and was more the technical player, was more the player who was going to thread the through ball or was going to maybe get on the end of a cutback to score a goal. You needed to balance that out with a Chris Baird to go in there and do the dirty work, and he's the architect of one of the funniest red cards ever, actually, in the game where we more or less book our qualification against Hungary at home when we score in the last minute. Chris Baird contrives to get 2 yellow cards in the same action of play and getting sent off for them. So he nailed somebody when they were on the break. The referee played advantage and he nailed the next person and got 2 yellow cards and get sent off. It was really funny. Go back and watch it if you've never seen it. This is something I've never seen before.
That's one for listeners to check out on YouTube.
Absolutely, yeah, it's really good. And we go on to but we missed him for that game that was after that. And in the Euros, first game's against Poland, and Michael O'Neill picks a mad team. He overthinks it. He doesn't make many mistakes in his Northern Ireland career, Michael, but that is one of them. And I believe, I could be completely wrong on this, but I believe he drops Chris Baird for that first game and then brings him back in. And that was always the way. If Michael needed, like we said about McTominay, like we said about Darren Fletcher, if Michael needs somebody to come in and carry out his instructions to a T, Baird was that man and was that man for so many years and should have never been dropped from that Northern Ireland team that went to the Euros. He should have been a shoe-in the whole time.
It's good to give an unsung hero like that a shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was just thinking a few names coming through into my head, but I think Baird has to be the one that just complements Davis in that midfield there. And in terms of my wide players, I'm a little bit young to remember sort of peak Keith Gillespie back in the day when he came through in the Premier League, so I'm going to rule him out. Not because I think the players I'm going to pick were necessarily better, but just these are the players that I hold the best memories for. I think Stuart Dallas more in the later part of his career rather than in the earlier part, where he sort of only comes through in the qualification for 2016. And I think he maybe starts 1 or 2 of the games, but he certainly isn't that player that he was for Northern Ireland sort of in the last 3 or 4 years, where I think he was probably Northern Ireland's best player. He's one of the only ones playing in the Premier League, playing for Leeds. The Leeds fans loved him. unfortunately still suffering from a terrible leg break, which he had about a year and a half ago. And I don't know if he's ever going to be the same player again. I hope to God that he is, because he could just play anywhere. He's played right back, left back, centre mid, right wing, left wing for Northern Ireland, and done every job he's been asked to do with aplomb, and a real leader on our side. And at a time where he was a bit younger than the likes of Davis and the Laffertys, he was able to come through and play at his absolute peak in the last few years for Northern Ireland. So I think Dallas on the right wing, but I'm glad to have him there to fill gaps, because I could just as easily put him anywhere else. And the last
final player.
Last one I'll pick is probably, I'm going to say, Jamie Ward, just because I absolutely loved him. Again, a bit of a cult hero. Never really had a massive impact at club level. I think he scores a load of goals for
Derby, right?
He was at Derby for a while, and then he was at Forest. Controversially, actually made the move there. Was a decent enough Championship winger, but epitomised everything that's good about Northern Ireland. And he wasn't, he wasn't born in Northern Ireland originally. I think he qualified for us through the grandmother rule, possibly. But he epitomised everything that was great about us. Sometimes you find that the fans don't. The players who come from England maybe have to work a little bit harder to get the endearment of the fans compared to Northern Ireland players.
Same for the Scotland team. Guys
totally.
Like Adams.
I think that's only natural. You will have more of an affinity to the local players, but Jamie Ward sort of threw that out the window, and it's because it's not really where you're born. It's how you. It's if you epitomise the culture of the country, and the never say die attitude that we saw every time Jamie Ward played for Northern Ireland was just made him an immediate fan favourite. I remember there's a goal he scores against, I think it's Lafferty's second goal against Finland. And Jamie Ward just has absolutely no right to keep the ball in the position that he does. He scraps, he keeps it in. Honestly, if you looked at him on the street, you'd have thought he was on fire. He must have done about 4 forward rolls, kept the ball, laid it back to Conor McLaughlin, and Lafferty headed it in. And that was what he was all about. He was never going to beat 5 players and bang one into the top corner, but he would scrap for absolutely everything. And that's the bare minimum we expect from a Northern Ireland player, and gave us so many memories, and was constantly picked along that time. So yeah, I think very difficult for an English player to be as loved as Jamie Ward was, but he absolutely epitomised everything that was great about Northern Ireland, and I think that's why he was such a fan's favourite for us. And yeah, I really miss him, actually. I really miss watching him play, because he was just such a little terrier, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, Jamie Ward's going to take my final spot.
What a formidable Northern Irish team you put together there. If you had to pick a manager, and then finally, also in Scott Ball podcast, we asked the guests, after they build their lifetime 11, to pick one player or manager to put in your Hall of Fame. So out of that team and the manager you're about to select, you pick one to go in the Hall of Fame. What are you saying?
So the manager, of course, will be Michael O'Neill. Just for what he's given us. I mean, Laurie Sanchez got some great results, but ultimately never really took us close to qualifying for a tournament. And we end up maybe 6. We take it to the last day in Euro 2008, but I think we needed to win in Spain and Sweden to possibly lose in Latvia, if memory serves me right. So never really took us close. But Northern Ireland under Michael O'Neill, qualifying 2016. Were unfairly beaten in a playoff in 2018 with a handball that never was, albeit that would have only taken it to penalties. Who knows what would have happened. And then in 2020 as well, we actually make a real fist of a group with Germany and Holland in it, which is just outrageous. We go 1-0 up in Rotterdam with 15 minutes to go, which would have qualified us. Unfortunately, we couldn't hold on. We lose the game 3-1. But the fact that Michael even made that in the equation that Northern Ireland could compete with those nations was just unbelievable. He's so well prepared. He gets the absolute best out of what we have, and he's by far, for me, the greatest manager that I've seen, certainly. And only really Billy Bingham can come close to him in terms of all-time Northern Ireland managers. And I haven't seen the 1958 sides and the 80s sides, but I think Michael runs them close. But in terms of the Hall of Fame, if I have to pick one from the players, including the manager, it would just have to be Steve Davis. It's probably a bit of a boring answer, but just for the longevity and the time he's done it, and he's been involved in great Northern Ireland sides that had those scalps that I've referred to, that have qualified for tournaments, but he's also sort of consistently shown up in even poor Northern Ireland sides when we had quite a problem for a while with players pulling out, for meaningless sort of friendlies. And, we struggled to get them away from their clubs for a while, and, players would be would pick up injuries the week before and miraculously be back playing for the clubs the week after. But Davis was never like that, and Davis always took pride in playing for his country. So, you know, for the quality that he brought, the goals, the moments, the longevity, everything, it's a no-brainer that would have to be Steve Davis.
Great selection, outstanding servant to Northern Ireland. That brings us to the end of this episode. Again, Andy, I'd just like to thank you very much for your time. You've been very generous. I've really enjoyed it, and wish Northern Ireland all the best, but not next Tuesday night. But I'm sure it'll be a great game. Thanks again.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me. Cheers.